I always say, oh, there's nothing to it. All you have to do is give fake people real emotions, and then people will love your characters. But giving fake people real emotions is not an easy thing. Lots of times if you think about family dynamics, or that relative that you always love to avoid visiting, there's a lot of negative emotions and those kinds of things attached. So if you're giving fake people real emotions, there's a certain level of depth and work that is involved. It's not something that's automatically easy to do. But at our very, very beginning, the very basics of character development, you can ask, what is it? What is character development? Well, you need to answer a question that's kind of simple and obvious. Who is your main character? So what traits does he or she have? Male or female? Height, weight, hair color, background, current job, all of these go into who your main character is. Some of them, there's been times where I wrote a story of a German immigrant, so I was kind of locked into a blonde-haired woman. If you're gonna write a story set, up in Houghton about Finnish people, you're kind of locked into a certain skin color, probably a certain eye color. Same thing if you're gonna write a story about an immigrant from, South Africa or something like that. So there's some things that you're locked into. More important, you get background and current job. What things have they faced in their past that make them who they are today, and what are they doing right now today? And sometimes, depending on what you're writing, the story could have something to do where a person's current job is in jeopardy, or they need to leave their current jobs at some point in the book, or they just lose their job, or maybe their job is to catch bad guys for a living, if you get into police detective kind of work. So essentially, at the very basics, who is your main character? You answer that as anything that will show up on a police scanner when an officer runs your driver's license. So if you get pulled over, they can pull up everything. They run your license plate and they get everything, pulls up on their scanner. They already know your name, all of the information that's on your driver's license. They can see your work. They can see if you have any, prior arrest, if there's a warrant out for your arrest, anything like that. The other thing that when we ask the question of who is your main character, the other thing you need to consider are special skills that may need to be used later in the story. Later in the story, these skills will usually correspond to the character's heroic qualities. We'll get into heroic qualities in a little bit, but for now, you can think of it as if you are writing a story about, let's go some kind of thriller. If this main character happens to be able to fly airplanes and they're a pilot and they need to get from New York City to California super quickly, having them have the ability to fly their own plane and just rent a plane and fly their own plane because they have a pilot's license, that is a special skill you might need to give your character for the purpose of the story. Another good example is if you think about the Hunger Games books. Katniss Everdeen, she starts out the series already a very skilled archer. She can shoot anything with a bow and arrow and do a very good job. That's a skill that she needs to have for the book, but the book isn't about how she acquires the skill. That's a skill that she starts off with. So sometimes, depending on what you're doing and what the plot of your novel is, you definitely need to think ahead and give your character some special skills. So as we look more into, okay, well, we answered who our character is now, so how do we develop them? All we have is a list of things right now. Well, character development itself, it's how your character changes over the course of the story. Character development is not a list of things your character does. However, here's the catch. So it's not just a list of things. It's not, oh, she wrote a book. Oh, she ate breakfast. Oh, she took a shower. Oh, she mowed the lawn. It's not a list of things that your character does. However, your character's actions and reactions can reveal the internal changes taking place. So even though character development is not a list of things your character does, certain things that your character does and how your character responds to those things can reveal that your character is slowly changing and growing into a deeper person or a better person. That's usually who our main characters are. We all want them to become better as the story goes on. Our antagonists, they can become worse, but our main characters need to, like become better. And so you can use actions and reactions to reveal some of these changes. These changes give your characters a sense of depth and make them true to life. So it's a subtle thing. A reader isn't going to be able to pick out and be like, hey, I loved this book and I loved these characters because, because they changed throughout the story. A reader's not going to necessarily say that, but they will notice if it's missing because the character is going to feel cardboard and predictable, and like they already know everything the character is going to do because they're not going to feel like real people. They're going to feel like caricatures, like the little cardboard guy at the front of the car dealership, that kind of deal thing. So going with one of my favorite ways to look at story structure, the movie Finding Nemo, because it has a pretty simple structure that everybody can relate to and understand. So what are some changes that Marlin undergoes in Finding Nemo? So Marlin is actually our hero, our main character, and he spends the whole story, his goal for the whole story is to try to find his son who got taken. So that's Marlin's goal. His motivation, he wants to do it because Nemo's his son, he loves his son. And the conflict, of course, is that he has to cross an entire ocean to get to Nemo. And Marlin's not very comfortable with that idea. So we can see some of the changes in these listed things that happen that Marlin does, or things that happen to Marlin. We can see how he changes. So here, Marlin starts the story, afraid to leave the reef and distrustful of everyone. Well, then he leaves the reef, but he's very scared. So he's already starting to change a little bit, because before Nemo was taken, nothing could get him to leave the reef. Now he's going to leave the reef. He really wants to find Nemo, so he leaves the reef. Then he tentatively makes a friend. So he's kind of learning to trust a little bit, but not that much. Then he saves Dory from the sharks. So by the time he's saving Dory from the sharks, he already has a lot more courage, and he's already changed a lot from being the fish who was afraid to leave the reef. Are you guys all with me so far? Do you have any questions about what's happening or how? I know these are a list of events, but they're more than just events. They're events that are showing how Nemo is changing. So is everybody with me so far on this? Or sorry, how Marlin's changing. Okay, I see. Victor, you're muted. I can't hear you if you had a.
Sorry about that. I said, just raise your hand if you want to ask a question. We'll make sure you get unmuted.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Everyone's with me so far. So he saves Dory from the sharks. He grows bolder. Then he saves Dory from the jellyfish, even though he ends up getting shocked at the end and hurt. So he's growing even more bolder. So he's continuing to change. Next, he trusts the turtles to take him to Sydney. So at the beginning, he won't leave the reef. He won't trust anyone. He won't even talk to anyone else. And now he's trusting strangers to help him. Then at the very end, he trusts a bird not to eat him and bring him up to the tower where Nemo is. He becomes better at relying on others. And if you remember the end of the movie Finding Nemo, it shows Marlin and Nemo back at the reef with Dory, and Marlin is telling jokes to these fish who he never joked with before, and he's laughing with people, and Nemo's having fun. So Marlin is a completely different fish at the end of the story than he is at the beginning. And this is all illustrated by how he changes in these actions. These actions force him to make changes and make decisions. If Marlin was going to stay the same and not change, he would still be on the reef. He would have maybe tried to pay somebody else to go find Nemo because, hey, he loves his son, but he would still be on the reef if nothing about Marlin had changed. If his character hadn't been developed at all, if he was the same character, he would still be on the reef, hoping Nemo someday makes it back to him, because that's who he was at the beginning of the story. So this can maybe be a part where people raise their hand or unmute, because I'm hoping for a little bit of interaction. How do other characters change in familiar stories? So if we look at Finding Nemo, someone tell me, how does Nemo change in Finding Nemo? Does anyone remember?
Nemo has to get bolder too. He wants adventure, but he got it in a not the way he was expecting. So he has to change too.
Yeah, he does. I mean, because he's kind of, at the beginning, he's a daddy's boy. He's a little crybaby. And then he's taken away from his dad and he's in the aquarium and all he wants to do is cry. He doesn't want to talk to any other fish. And there's that old Scarface fish that makes him, go through, their whole Hawaiian little thing, whatever. But then, he ends up going in and plugging the filter, remember? And only he can do that. That's not the same fish who was daddy's little boy on the reef either. So Nemo certainly changes. It's not as noticeable or as big as Marlin's change, but it's still there. Another one, how do Elizabeth and Darcy change in Pride and Prejudice? If anyone can remember way, way back to high school English class. No takers? No one wants to tell me how they change in Pride and Prejudice? Oh, this is so disappointing. So if you remember, Darcy at the beginning of Pride and Prejudice, anybody who's poor and doesn't make a lot of money and isn't some super accomplished pianist with embroidery and all of these skills, there's this whole list of stuff he gives to Bingley, right? And this is what an accomplished woman is, and I will never even think about talking to a woman who doesn't meet this whole high list of qualifications. And of course, Elizabeth overhears it, and Elizabeth looks at him and says, all rich people are snobby jerks, and I want nothing to do with them. Now, both Darcy and Elizabeth drastically change their opinions of each other as the novel progresses. Darcy realizes that even though Elizabeth is not a great pianist and not great at embroidery and doesn't come from a super wealthy and affluent family, she has a lot of other very noble characteristics, very admirable characteristics. She's smart, which is more than a lot of the women in his circles are, and things like that. And Elizabeth, on the other hand, thinks Darcy only cares about himself and rich people, and come to find out Darcy will go through, drastic lengths to help his sister and people who have been hurt because of someone who was raised in their household kind of as a brother. And so there's a lot more to Darcy too. So they both have to change before, they can fall in love and have their happily ever after. What about Elsa in the first Frozen movie? Someone tell me how she changes. When she starts off the movie, she runs away. She has these powers. She accidentally freezes something. And then what does she do? She runs away and she wants to hide. She doesn't want to be with anybody else. She's afraid she's going to hurt people. So she runs away somewhere where she can use her powers and not have to be around any other people. Now, at the end of the movie, you have her using her powers to unthaw, her city, and using her powers for good and using her powers to help people. You have her creating a little snow cloud for Olaf so that he can walk around in an eternal winter, even when all the seasons come back to Arendelle. So you have her changing throughout the course of the story. And I would actually argue that Elsa's not the main character. The main character is Anna, but you still have some, you still definitely see some character change with her. Are there any other examples? Is anybody like, wow, I can think of this book or this movie? Yes, Deborah.
I was thinking back to the original Wizard of Oz and how each of the characters goes through change. The Scarecrow, who thinks he isn't smart at all, is the smartest one of the bunch. And the Cowardly Lion, of course, finds the courage that he needs, but each of that little set, they all change from what they think they are to what they think they aren't, and what they want to be into that.
That's a very good example, because yes, you're exactly right. You can see the change with every single one of the characters, and their goals are pretty outward. You know, I want courage, I want a heart, I want I don't remember.
I want a brain.
Yeah, I want a brain. Yeah. So those are all pretty outward, very good examples. Anyone else? Okay. Well, let's move on. So here's a few notes about character change. As Deborah just pointed out, other characters besides your protagonist can change throughout the story. It's not just limited to your main character. You can have minor characters change. In fact, I would argue that the best novels and best stories do have minor characters who change. Antagonists can also change. Usually they get worse. Usually the antagonists change and they become more determined to blow up that nuclear bomb, or more determined to, you know, hunt down this person that they blame for something that happened to their father 35 years ago, or, you know, so usually they get worse. If you think even in terms of like a basic simple cop show, you know, that's like the good detective cops are trying to catch the bad guys. Lots of times the bad guys will get worse throughout even that short 45-minute, you know, show. The bad guys will get worse. They will start by murdering one person, and then the good guys are onto them. So then they will up the stakes, and they will kill a couple more people who don't talk, and you have that whole kind of thing. So even in something as simple as a 40-minute TV show, you can see a progression of the antagonists, how they're changing for the worst. They can change they can have a change of heart. I have a friend who, it's almost like every other book she writes, she will have some character who's supposed to be a bad guy. She'll have like, I'm thinking of one example in World War I, a German soldier, and they were occupying Netherlands. And the German soldier kind of had a change of heart and let the good people escape at the very end. He just didn't have the heart to blow the whistle and call attention to the good people who are trying to escape. So she has a way of kind of working that in. She writes some espionage novels, and there was another one where there was someone who was supposed to be a spy and kind of had a change of heart. They were kind of suckered into being a spy, and in the end they couldn't go through with, you know, contacting whoever they're supposed to contact and turn in the good guys. So you can have that too, as well. You usually still need a bad guy who's very bad. You can have a semi-bad person have a change of heart, but you usually kind of need a bad guy just to keep the whole plot, you know, going, if that makes sense. You don't want to completely change the story plot at the end and have it look like, oh, well, like main characters didn't need to do all that stuff anyway because the bad guy was going to change. So you don't want it to be quite like that. It's a good balance. Do note though, and this is probably very important, if your main character doesn't change at all, then you need to work harder at developing him or her and making the character more realistic. So you should be able to, like we did with Marlin, looking at your book that you're writing or one you already wrote, but you know, you can't find an agent who's interested in it or a publisher who wants it or whatever the case may be. You should be able to look and have a list of things. This is how my character changes. This is how my character grows. Not, these are all the things my character does, but some of the things that your character does needs to show how they are changing on the inside. Okay, any questions so far? We can go here. I have a couple diagrams of character arcs. This one is just, I think you can see my mouse here, right? Can you guys see my mouse?
Yep.
Okay, this one is just the character arc. So the protagonist wants a goal. Marlin wants his son back. Marlin can't get Nemo back. the protagonist must act to try to get the goal, and here the protagonist changes his attitude, emotions about the goal. So this is just an example of an arc that's just the one character, how they might change throughout the course of the story. The next one here, this has a lot more, this one gets a lot more complicated. So you see in red here, you have the main character arc, and this is how they're changing and how they're growing. It's not necessarily the plot, but it's how they're growing as the plot unfolds. Here they have a classic three act structure where they have the climax right in the middle of the book. A lot of popular fiction doesn't follow that arc. A lot of popular fiction is actually going to put the climax more, over here. But here they have the classic story arc. And even here, notice they have the main character still growing and developing, and the main character's kind of ultimate growth going a little deeper than the climax of the story. Then they have secondary characters who are growing and changing as the story goes. And same here. So if we were doing Finding Nemo, you could say maybe that the red one is Marlin, but you could say this black one over here is Nemo. And Dory, I think, would just be a flat line. Dory really doesn't change. She's very interesting and she's very funny. She doesn't actually change at all. And you don't need every character to change. If you have every character change, you're probably going to overwhelm your readers and confuse them. But there's a good 1 or 2 or 3 characters that you want to put the effort in to have them change. I am kind of reading a series. It's not what I normally read, but I'm in a marketing group, and the leader of this marketing group writes like political thrillers and has this counter-espionage woman agent who runs around and saves the day. But her main romantic interest, her boyfriend of 4 years who lives with her, he kind of drives me crazy because he never changes. He's just like always there, always good looking, always super supportive, always, oh, that's okay, babe, we'll work with it. Like, he never changes. There's no depth to him. Now, the main character, she changes and she grows and she learns things. And I literally feel like he just picked a cardboard boyfriend. And it's really funny because the cardboard boyfriend is, he's an Air Force pilot. And of course, this writer used to be an Air Force pilot. He used to fly F-16s for the airport. So for the Air Force, I feel like he took himself and then he just made himself cardboard and put him in this novel series. And so there's enough other things that are interesting that I'm still reading the book series. But that one character, he just kind of, I'm like, man, it's like 6-7 books in. Can something interesting happen with this guy? Nope, he's just gonna be the same. Oh, honey, I love you. Yep. Look at me, I'm good looking and I love you and I'll support you. Okay, yep, thank you, got the message. So anyway, that's just, I see some of you guys laughing. I can't see all your faces at once, but so that's that's just something to be mindful of. If the characters who are gonna have a big role, you want to take the time to make them feel real and true to life and not all the way, not like caricatures or cardboard, but like real people. So we have talked about how we're developing our characters, how we're growing our characters. But if we're smart, we'll also do a few other things that will extra make our characters stand out, because, when we are writing these things, there are tons of other authors out there. There's how many millions of fiction books just on Amazon alone that people can go and buy at any point in time. And that's not even if you're trying to get an agent and a publisher. That's just if you're publishing on your own. And then if you're trying to get an agent or an editor, then it's even more competition. And so how can you make your characters stand out? They need to be developed, yes, but there's a few things you can do at the beginning, this one especially. So I would say if you really want to make your characters stand out, any good book is going to need that character arc where the character changes and develops. Even movies put those character arcs in. But if you really want to make your character stand out from the beginning, I would say there's 2 things you need. So they are heroic qualities and they are inner conflicts. So we're going to look at each of those here. real quick, and then we will see how we're doing on time and if we have time to get into anything about dialogue. So, all right, so heroic qualities. Your main character needs to possess qualities that humanity looks up to and admires. So there needs to be something that makes this character stand out, that makes people root for them. Even in movies, you will have this thing where this guy who looks like the bad boy in the motorcycle on the leather jacket or whatever, he might stop and pet a dog, you know? He might do something to show that he's not actually as careless and ambivalent towards everybody as what he appears. So Marlin from Finding Nemo, he's dedicated. He will stop at nothing to get his son. Katniss from the Hunger Games, she's sacrificial. She's willing to take her sister's place in the Hunger Games. You can like or dislike dystopian novels. You can like or dislike, you know, the setup of the Hunger Games. You can be very horrified at the whole idea of the Hunger Games and how horrifying it would be to have kids forced to kill each other. But you still can't take away the fact that Katniss taking her sister's place is very noble. It's very sacrificial, and it's something that in general humanity admires, someone who's willing to make that sacrifice. You know, it's like the firemen going into the Twin Towers on 9/11 and never coming out. It's very sacrificial, and everybody can admire the people who made that sacrifice, running into a building to save other people, even though those firefighters were very well aware that those buildings could collapse, you know, at any time. So those are things that all of humanity is going to admire, and your main character needs to have a couple things like that. It could be, you know, two things, it could be one thing that's really strong, but your main character needs to have something that's going to need to make the regular reader look up to them and admire them. People don't want to read books unless you're a literary fiction fan. So the popular fiction, people who are reading for fun, they don't want to read books about jerks that have nothing good about them. They're not going to care. They're going to read the book for 3 or 4 pages and they're going to put the book down. That's why you really need to give your characters some heroic qualities. The Writing the Breakout Novel Workbook by Donald Moss. I know I've mentioned it before in some other seminars that I've done, but that's a wonderful workbook. And so he actually has some exercises you can go through if you have a copy of that workbook. He has exercises that you can go through, ways you can give your characters heroic qualities. He's really good at kind of just walking you through how to bring that out, how to make sure you put it, you know, in the first scene or two that where you show your characters, so that your readers will automatically start to like the characters and want to keep turning the pages and find out what is going to happen to these people. So next, your character needs some kind of intrinsic heroic quality. Your character might also need a special skill that helps them through the story. So we kind of mentioned this at the beginning because you need to put it in if you have a sheet about your character with all the different character traits. Excuse me. You're going to need to convey that at the beginning, but the whole reason that they might have this skill, like Katniss does for the Hunger Games, the whole reason that they might have this skill is so that they can stand out as a hero and they can use this special skill in really good ways later on as the story progresses. And so that's why it's pretty obvious that Suzanne Collins just gave Katniss the ability from the beginning to be an excellent archer. Katniss needs that skill for the story to happen. Giving your characters heroic qualities will make readers care about what happens to them. And giving your characters heroic qualities will make readers care whether they succeed in achieving their story goals. So those might sound like they are related, but they're kind of two different things. You want readers to care, does the person live? Are they going to survive? But then it's a level deeper to have readers care if they succeed in Finding Nemo, or if they succeed in, you know, whatever their goal might be. That's just a step more that makes it more personal. So so like I said, heroic qualities, they're a way to universally appeal to every reader. They're things that you know, all of humanity looks up to, and there's things that, you know, if you get books that are, well, like Karen Dion, right? She did our keynote session, you know, a year ago with the Marsh King's Daughter. Her book was an international bestseller. There were attributes of her book in her works that appealed not just to people in the US, but they appealed to people in Turkey when her book was translated, or people, you know, in Germany, or people in India. You know, it appealed to all kinds of people because it hit on some basic things, some basic issues that all of humanity recognizes, this father-daughter relationship, and what is a normal father-daughter relationship, and what happens when that father-daughter relationship is, you know, starts off in very unusual and a very unhealthy situation, and can this daughter overcome that? And so that's something that's going to appeal to all of humanity. And so it's great if you can give your character those qualities. That's going to, you know, be huge in how you can help readers get interested right away and stick with the story. So the next thing that you give, and this is always one of my favorites, because in my way of thinking, it's impossible to put too many different layers of conflict in a novel. You could always add more conflict and make your novel just a little bit more interesting. So internal conflict is the next thing that you can give your character. This is different than external conflict. This is different than the plot. This is different than what happens to your, what your character is trying to do. So, you know, your character might be trying to catch the serial killer. Well, you can have lots of characters try to catch serial killers. Everybody wants the serial killer to get caught, but that character might not have any internal conflict. Now, if you have the character trying to catch a serial killer that they think their brother might be enabling or helping, then that just gets a lot more personal, and it creates a layer of internal conflict. I'm probably getting a little ahead of myself, so we'll go with the first point here. So internal conflict can be summed up as the inner turmoil that's going on inside the character's head and heart. Books are always much better at conveying internal conflict than movies, because books can describe characters' thoughts and feelings, while movies and plays can only hint at them. So in movies and plays, you have to guess. In a book, if somebody's all torn up and had the worst day ever, you can tell your readers exactly what that person's thinking. You can tell exactly what the person's feeling, why they're feeling that way. That's a unique power that is only available with writing words when people read books. And it's one of the big reasons why people will love a novel and then they'll make it into a movie and they'll be like, well, the novel just, you know, was so much better than the movie. They ruined the book by making that movie, because they couldn't convey all of the things the character was thinking and all of the things that the character is feeling. They cannot be conveyed if you turn it into a play or you put it in a movie. They just can't. And so that's something that is easier for us to do as authors, for sure. So there's two simple ways. I say they're simple methods. The idea behind them is simple. Implementing them is going to take some work, but you know, it's writing, and anything that's worth doing takes work when you're writing. So that's just the way that goes. So two simple methods for giving characters internal conflict. First, have your character face inner demons in triggering situations. I am very aware that today, in today's society, it's this horrible thing if you ever trigger anybody. You don't ever want to trigger anybody that you come across in real life, because that could just be very bad and very upsetting emotionally, or very rude, or whatever. But in fiction, when you have fake people, okay, you want to trigger them all the time because it's very interesting. It gives them another layer in your readers. They're rooting for these characters, and so they want to see your characters overcome these triggering situations. They want to see these characters deal successfully with this inner demon and this biggest fear and all of that. It's very important that they see your characters overcoming these things. So you want to have your characters face inner demons, for sure. The next thing you can do, and this again is in writing the Breakout Novel Workbook, Donald Moss has a section on inner conflict, and he has exercises, and it's just great how he has you work through it. You can give your character 2 mutually exclusive goals. Now you're probably thinking, what? What does that mean? Well, give your character 2 different things that they want, and they're both opposite. So in order to get the one, they have to give up the other. And you can have them, that's why I have here list 4 different steps your character can take to achieve each of these goals. You can have your character actually pursue these things that they know are working in opposite, but they really, really want both things. That is a simple way, especially as you're first learning to give your character inner conflict, if you can make them want, at the setup from your story, make them want 2 different things, 2 mutually exclusive things, then that puts a layer of inner conflict naturally in your novel, and your character is going to have to be deep and have a deep, thought life in order to reconcile these and have the story move forward. So some examples of inner conflict. Marlin in Finding Nemo. He's afraid to leave the reef. Why? We know he's afraid already. We talked about that, but why? Because he lost his wife and other children to a predatory fish. So that's his inner demon. Okay? So in leaving the reef, he's going to have to face this inner demon. He's going to have to do this one thing. The one thing he's going to have to forsake and put behind, the one thing he's been trusting to keep him safe for all of these years. He wants to stay safe himself, but he wants to save Nemo. So now he's got these 2 mutually exclusive goals. His goal is to stay safe, and his goal is to save his son. But if he's going to save his son, how can he save his son and stay safe? How can he do those 2 things? Saving his son means going into danger. And so there's internal conflict that's there for Marlin. Even from the get-go. That doesn't necessarily last the whole novel because he leaves, but it is good, and it does go to show you your internal conflict. It doesn't always need to go the whole story. Sometimes you can just use it to go through 3 or 4 chapters just to keep it more interesting as the external things are revving up in your plot, and you're getting more and more external things. As the beginning, as you're laying some of that groundwork, a lot of times it's great to have some kind of family dynamics and some kind of family fight in there with your character, or a fight between your character and their best friend that lasts for a few chapters while you're working on the external things. But everybody can relate to those annoying relatives and those annoying family members. Everybody can relate to those kinds of conflicts. So in Hunger Games, Katniss is loyal and wants to save the people she cares about. We know that from the beginning. If she wasn't loyal and she wasn't sacrificial, she wouldn't even be there. Prim would be there, dead, So, but as the story progresses, she wants to save Prim and Peeta and even Rue. But she also wants to survive the Hunger Games and return home. So she has these 2 mutually exclusive goals, right? It's one of the biggest questions in the Hunger Games. How can she return home alive and not kill Peeta? That's coming the whole entire time. You have these other dramas, you have these other situations, you have these characters that almost kill her getting injured, Peeta getting injured, on and on it goes. It gets more and more intense, but at the very end, she has a choice. And everybody's wondering, okay, you want Katniss to win, but are you going to want Katniss to win if she has to kill Peeta? Is somebody else going to kill Peeta? And so those are 2 mutually exclusive goals. And right up until the very end, you are thinking, how are both Katniss and Peeta going to get out of the Hunger Games alive? It seems impossible. So there, the author did an extremely good job of coming up with those two mutually exclusive goals where the character spends the entire story working, you know, kind of on both those things, if that makes sense. Are there any questions so far or anything? I know, let me look at the time here. So we are kind of, I don't know how tight you are on time, but we are kind of have like 8 minutes left. So does anyone have any questions or anything like that? No questions? Clear as mud? All right, great. Sounds good. So some more about internal conflict. A lot of times it can correspond with the genre that you're writing. I use this a lot in romance novels. Romance novels often pit the protagonist's story goal against the protagonist's growing romantic feelings for another character. So an example might be, I love him, but if I move across the country to be with him, then I'll have to give up the dream job I spent the last 10 years working for. And so these mutually exclusive goals are, you know, the character is following this, they're falling in love, they're thinking, man, my life is going to be so much better, I'm a better person around this person I'm going to love, my life is going to be so much better with this other person in my life, I think I might want to spend the rest of my life with him, but if I do that, this other thing that I really, really want, you know, whether it's a job or a comfortable life because, you know, the person they're falling in love with doesn't have enough money, or this project that they're really, really working on. I write historical novels, so, you know, you know, like social mobility was kind of like a bigger thing back then, where you didn't necessarily have people who were well accomplished and rich really didn't marry people from working class people. Now it's more common, and you know, there is a little bit better ease of social mobility. But so you can have these two things in a romance novel, you know, the mutually exclusive goals. One of them is usually the romantic relationship, and then it's a question, what are the characters going to have to give up to have that relationship? Are they willing to do that? Is it even healthy to do that? You know, today in 2020, is it healthy for a woman who's at the top of her, you know, corporate career in doing wonderful things? Is it even healthy for her to give it all up for a man and move over to, you know, to California or something like that? You know, 120 years ago, there was no question who would follow who where. But today, you know, how are you even going to have that woman leave and not have a bunch of readers give you the worst reviews ever on Amazon for writing this sexist, misogynistic thing where women just follow men everywhere, you know? So those are things that you have to kind of work out and figure out. Thrillers will often pit the protagonist's desire to stay alive against his desire to kill the bad guys and save others. That's when you'll have, a lot of times in these novels, you have the good guy walking into a situation where they know they're going to end up dead. You know, I will willingly walk into this terrorist den knowing I have little hope of surviving, but hey, I stopped that nuclear bomb going off. And then you go, you know, like a step further and say, I have this disabled child at home who needs me to protect them and take care of them, but I can't let this bomb go off and kill millions of people. And so walking into this terrorist den means I'm also sacrificing the well-being of my daughter. You can add an extra layer of conflict in that as well. So some of these, even though, you know, they're outward examples, there's a lot of internal conflict and internal struggle going on where the character has to choose between two mutually exclusive goals, and they can't have it all. Any questions on that in particular? Thoughts, anything like that? Okay. So then my last thing I have here, always, always, always have your character face his or her biggest fears. Real life and novels are so very, very, very different. What makes an interesting story is not what makes great real life. So in a novel, it's always great to have your characters face their biggest fears. Readers want to know what happens. They want to see your character respond heroically. They want to see how your character has changed and developed in your character becoming a better person as the story goes on. But, you know, in real life, none of us is saying, oh yeah, I would love to stand in a pit of snakes with them, you know, slithering over my feet for 12 hours. That sounds like a great thing to do to face my biggest fears. None of us want to do that, you know? So that's where you got to keep in mind what makes great fiction is often the exact opposite of what makes great real life. You want your life to be as boring as ever. There's never any losing your job or financial turmoil or anybody trying to kill you. But that would be the boringest ever book to read. So real life and fiction are exactly the opposite. But people want to see real characters or characters who feel real to them responding to these kind of crazy situations, which is where giving them real emotions, real depth, real turmoil, real conflict. That's why this is also important. So your characters can feel like they're real people to the readers, even though the list of situations they're going through is not remotely realistic or real, you know. So that is pretty much all I have to say about conflict itself. I do have some slides about dialogue. I don't know if you want me to kind of go through those. I guess that's kind of up to Victor. If you want me to go through those, I think I have like 4 slides. Or if you want me to maybe save that for some time in the future.
Well, let's go ahead. I'm curious. I'd like to see it.
Okay, because I didn't know, it said 7 to 8, so I didn't know if the 8 was like a
We're a
real
little bit
strict.
relaxed here.
Okay, all right, great. We can continue then. That'll work. So, characters and dialogue. Here, let me get a drink of water. All right. Dialogue can reveal a lot about your characters. Lovely sentence there. That doesn't even have a period on it. Isn't that great? Okay, but it's true. Dialogue can reveal a lot about your characters. One of the things it can kind of tell you, it can tell you the setting, it can tell you some of the character's background, maybe the character's socioeconomic status. So here I have 3 different ways to give directions. And each of these tell you something about the character and possibly about the setting. So the first one, well now, reckon you might find what you're looking for down yonder. Okay? That tells you somebody's going to say, reckon you might find what you're looking for down yonder, and they put their thumb over their shoulder or jut their chin a certain direction. That tells you what kind of person you're dealing with. Next, and this is one I use because it's kind of like the directions to my house, go down the road for 7 miles, then turn left across from the old white church. Well, that's a little more clear. For me, it's go down the road about 7 miles, then turn left from the old white school building at the bottom of the hill. You know, that's my road. So it tells you something, but it's still not nearly as specific as continue down this road for 7.3 miles, then turn left onto Reed Street. So there's a world of difference. There's difference between all 3 of them. There's a world of difference between the top one and the bottom one for sure. And it tells you might be in a city for one, you're definitely in the country for the first one, but you're probably in the country with someone who might not even know how to read and might not have even graduated from high school for the first one. And this one sounds like a very specific person who's probably looking it up on their GPS after pulling, their phone out of the pocket of their Armani suit or something along those lines. So they tell you something about the setting, they tell you something about the character who is talking about it. So they all kind of work together here. So dialogue can reveal setting, it can reveal character's social status and background. So even in the next 2, you have Ma, come quick, you have to see this, versus Mother, there's something in the stable that you might find of interest. Okay, you right? Yeah, I mean, you can have, I see some of you guys laughing there. Like you can have, so the first one I think like Little House on the Prairie, like Laura like rushing into the door of the cabin, Ma, come quick. And then the second one, I just envision in my mind some, like heir to a title in Great Britain, aristocrat kind of person, walking very sedately up the steps to their estate and finding their mother embroidering in the parlor, and Mother, there's something in the stable that you might find of interest. 2 very different kind of characters are going to be speaking in these ways, and different settings accompanying them as well. So the setting and the social status background, they kind of merge at some point, you know, they're different, but they kind of all blend together at some point. Another thing that dialogue can reveal about your characters is relationships. What do they call their parents? I read a lot of novels. I don't know what it is, like so many novels, like they have characters call their parents by their first names. Now, I'm like almost 40. I can't imagine calling my mom and dad by their first name just because I turned 18. Do any of you call your mom and dad by their first names? Yeah, it's still mom and dad. So I don't know. I always assume that these characters have very emotionally detached and unhealthy relationships with their parents when they're calling them by their first names. But you have even mother and father, which is going to be more of your prep school, aristocrat, gossip girl kind of feel, where they say mother and father. You have ma and pa, Laura Ingalls Wilder, Little House on the Prairie, they're ma and pa, and you have mom and dad. You know, so that tells you something even about, you know, right there about their relationships and something about their social status too, perhaps. What do they call their siblings and friends? Is it Catherine Elizabeth, Catherine, Cat, or Sunshine? You know, somebody says, hey, Sunshine, come sit down. That's different than saying, Catherine Elizabeth, come sit down. You know, all I did was change the name, but you can almost hear in your head the different change of voice. You can almost envision in your head the different setting. Hey, Sunshine, come sit down, you know, at a coffee shop or at a bar or something when a friend just walks in, versus Catherine Elizabeth, come sit down. I feel like you're being called to a formal dinner at this giant dining room table, you know? Dialogue can also reveal emotions and thoughts. So this, especially dialogue itself, can't always reveal emotions and thoughts so much, but if you're using it alongside character beats or descriptive phrases, that's when you can turn dialogue into something that's really, really powerful, that reveals things about your main character, but this is also very helpful to sometimes reveal things about characters that you're not using their point of view. So, so here you have, no, she whispered past the sudden lump that had formed in her throat. No, I don't wish to see him. Please tell him I'm not home. Then you have, no, the force of his voice echoed around the room and a muscle pulsed at the side of his jaw. I refuse to see him. Tell him if he returns, I'll call the police. So they're both saying the same thing. Those are both saying, I don't want to see this person. Okay, I don't want to see the person who's at the door. But when you compare, when you add the difference, you know, here, she whispered past the lump, the sudden lump that had formed in her throat. That's more of a emotional turmoil. This, the force of his voice echoed around the room and a muscle pulsed at the side of his jaw. You know, he's angry, okay? This person's upset, she's sad. She's not angry though, you know? This person is angry. Then he says, you know, I'll call the police. Tell him if he returns, I'll call the police. So you're conveying the same idea. You know, your words themselves, they just said the same things. You know, no, I don't want to see the person at the door. But they tell you so much more about the character's emotions and their thoughts just by, you know, please tell him I'm not home versus I'll call the police. You know, right there, two different things. And the beats here, or the tags, I guess this one would be a tag, this one would be a beat, but you know, there's a sudden lump that forms in her throat versus the anger here, the force of his voice echoing around the room and a muscle pulsing. So can you guys see the difference in those two things, and how when you add, you know, just a little bit of description with that dialogue, you are revealing a lot more about the character, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. You guys all with me on that? I'm kind of scrolling through to see if you guys are nodding your heads or shaking your heads, or if I've lost anyone. Okay. So this next point, dialogue can also, looks like I didn't proofread this presentation very well. Dialogue can also reveal thoughts of non-point of view characters. I didn't go into a lot, you know, to write out at this stage. But you think of a police detective interviewing a suspect, even in a book. You don't necessarily know what the suspect is thinking, but if the suspect refuses to talk and asks for a lawyer right away, that's different from a suspect that's being like, hey, you can search me, you can search my house, you know, whatever you want, I promise I didn't do it. Those two things. So even though you don't know whether the person's guilty or innocent, even though you don't know what the person's thinking, having a conversation between two characters is a great way to hint at what a minor character is thinking. Lots of times writers, especially newer writers that are just kind of starting to learn the craft and get, you know, really kind of develop their writing abilities, they'll think, oh, I need to know, I want my readers to know what this character is thinking, so I need to give them a point of view. And then you'll get these novels that have like 7 point of views, and like 4 of the point of views only have like 1 or 2 scenes. Okay, you do not need those last 4 point of views. You need to work on conveying those characters' thoughts through other means. And a conversation is usually one of the best ways to do that. Dialogue is usually one of the best ways to do that, because you can have your main character and we know their thoughts, and then they can notice the person's shifting, the person's looking down at their feet, the person's acting uncomfortable, the person's whispering, the person's looking away. You know, that's a person who doesn't want to answer questions. Or you have the person with the muscle pulsing at the side of the jaw, and the muscle, and the person who stands up and storms off, and that's a person who's angry. So you're telling your characters, this person is scared or this person is angry, without ever getting inside their head and being able to see their thoughts. So dialogue can be really, really powerful. These conversation scenes can be really, really powerful, and you can do a lot with them. But it's a skill that needs to be developed. So next time you're thinking, oh, I have to give this person a point of view because I really want my characters to know what they're thinking. Chances are you don't have to give this person 3 point of views throughout a 90,000 word novel. You just need to give them a pretty specific pointed conversation with the main character that will reveal what this minor character is thinking, because your readers might need to know what the minor character is thinking. And even if you go back, if you remember the diagram several slides ago that had the arcs for the minor characters, you don't need to necessarily have those characters' point of views. Sometimes just the observations, the conversation, and the observations and the actions that are going on that the main character observes can show the reader how the minor character is changing. You can even get to that level where you're conveying all that much. I mean, think of how much we know about how Marlin changed in Finding Nemo, and we never actually read any of his thoughts. All we saw were his words and his actions. That's all we saw, what he did, how he reacted to things that happened to him, what he did and what he said. So if they can do it in movies for main characters, then we can do it for minor characters, especially using our main characters to observe what's going on with the minor characters very specifically. Is that making sense? Are you guys following me with that? Okay. All right, so quick dialogue tips. Dialogue needs to be natural and sound like everyday conversation. I judge writing contests like once a year at least, usually, and it never, well, now I judge the semifinal rounds, so I don't get like the brand new writers, but I can't tell you how many times I would start reading and it would be like, you know, a writer had learned that you shouldn't just say right from the beginning, oh, this character has brown hair and blue eyes and is short and blah, blah, blah. And so then they'll go a step on, and I'm sure I did it at one time. You know, it's all part of the learning process as you're learning to become a better writer and you're use your words in a more powerful way. But you know, so then they have this conversation where they explain all of these things. Well, yes, my sister has dark hair and is kind of short. Why? Have you ever remembered seeing her? It's this totally artificial conversation. Nobody's ever going to talk about these things that way, but they'll use it, or they'll do something. You know, I edited. I kind of coached a writer a few years ago who wanted to convey that the main character's daughter was very, very important to her. This was a novelization based on a real historical figure in Scotland from, like 1,000 years ago. Literally I guess it would have been like 700 or 800 years ago. But anyway, and so they're trying to convey that this daughter is important to her. So it's this guard is having this conversation with this noblewoman talking about the daughter. And it's all such boring stuff that would never come up in a normal conversation. But it was the person's way of putting that information in there. I'm like, no, you have to take this out. You have to do this better. My eyes are glazing over. I'm skimming. It's as boring as all get out. If you want us to know that she loves her daughter, put in a scene where she's with her daughter and we see her with her daughter, showing her love or protecting her from a tree branch that almost falls on her head during a storm, or whatever you want to do. There are a million ways you can show it, but don't use dialogue as an excuse to write the most boring conversation ever. People aren't going to read it. You're going to lose readers, especially if you try it in chapter 1 of the chapter 1 right there. So next thing, dialogue needs to advance the plot. It needs to have a point and it needs to fit into your story structure. So lots of times you can, the next thing I have, don't have the main character go to Sunday dinner at Mom's and then have nothing happen that relates to the story. Hey, you can use Sunday dinner at Mom's to have this argument and show how the mom is against the detective because he's working in a dangerous job, and this stuff that's going to lead to some inner conflict or give another layer of external conflict to the story. Hey, that's great. I'm not saying your main character can't go to Sunday dinner at Mom's, but don't have your main character go to Sunday dinner at Mom's and talk about the weather or talk about the new car Dad just bought or talk about any boring stuff just because that's what your Sunday dinner with your mom looks like. If it doesn't help advance the plot of the story, if it doesn't make the story arc go upwards and show us new things, then take it out. Don't put dialogue in there just, hey, I want to show that this character is my main character's best friend, so they're going to have a conversation. Okay, that can work. Have it be an interesting conversation that shows how well the two characters know each other and how they're going to work together through the rest of the story, and have them discuss something that's going to pertain to the plot later in that conversation. Don't just show them at, a coffee shop talking about the weather. That's not going to help. Okay? Do you see how there's a difference between the two of those? Yes, no, yes, maybe? Okay. So, and my last thing, less is usually more. Keep the words meaningful and to the point so that your readers don't get overwhelmed with the dialogue. I don't know if you guys ever read novels and you see a paragraph that's like this long, it's like half a page, and you're going, is that all in quotation marks? Is the person really talking that much? Hey, if the person actually does have that much to say, because every once in a while there's a legitimate reason to have a character have that much to say, make sure you're breaking it up with some emotions and some reactions, some observations. Hey, you can even have like an eagle screeching or swooping down and grabbing a fish out of the lake or whatever, and break it up with some other things so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming. You never want a reader to look at the page itself and be like, seriously, I have to read all that, so if you do need to put a big chunk in there, don't make it seem like a big chunk. Break it up. If it's dialogue, you've already got two characters there, the character's not talking to themselves, so have the other character react in some way, shape, or form to what's going on and what's being said. So in conclusion, giving fake people real thoughts and emotions isn't easy. There are lots of facets that go into developing a well-rounded character that readers will remember after they finish a book. Remember to give your characters both heroic qualities and internal conflict in order to make the protagonist stand out to the reader. All right, any questions? Either I was very boring or I explained everything very well, because no one has anything to say. So
it was a very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot.
Glad you weren't bored.
It was also, Naomi, very clearly communicated and logical in your progression. So it was easy to follow.
Okay, good. I think you guys should all, Victor, I believe, sent out an email that had the slides, so you can print
Yes.
off the slides. I didn't know if you wanted to print them off and do notes on them during the presentation or whatever. So those slides at least are all there if you want to go back to them or refer to them or whatever. So.
Great. Thank you, Naomi, for bringing your energy, expertise, and enthusiasm. I mean, it's clear your passion for this work, and we all were carried away by it. That's why we're speechless.
Okay, well, I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad everyone, I'm glad it was helpful. I love writing, and I enjoy teaching writers how to write well. You know, writing is really hard. It's hard work. And so I feel like anytime any of us can share tips or tricks that are going to make us better communicators and make us better at doing what we love. So hopefully we can sell more books and get money for doing what we love, get paid doing what we love. You know, it's a great opportunity to share and grow because like I said, writing, it's hard work, you know, especially if you're doing novels. You start with a blank page and a computer screen. And keeping readers entertained for 400 pages when you start with that blank page and that computer screen, keeping readers who are so, you know, interested in TV or Facebook or the newest notification or text message that pops up on their phone, keeping readers' interest today. It's way harder than it was to keep readers' interest, you know, even 50 years ago, let alone 100 or 120 years ago. There's a real art to it that you have to hook the readers right away with your characters, with your plot. You have to make them care right away. They're never going to read past page 5. If they don't read past page 5, maybe they bought one book of yours, but that's all they're buying. And so, you know, in order for us to do this and earn an income doing this, there's a lot of hard work that goes into it. So I'm happy to be able to share what helps. Hopefully it helps you, and hopefully you guys, you know, are sharing things with other people and we all help each other. That's more of us who get to make money doing what we love, so.
Great. That's what we're trying to do here at UPA, and thank you again for your time. This has been great, and I will encourage everyone to watch the replays.
Thank you.
Before we lose Naomi, Victor, did you want to do like an introduction for her that you can place in front of the video or anything? Or
Yeah, let's do that. Let me get my PowerPoint back up. Where is that?
I thought before I stopped the recording.
Yeah, good point.
Otherwise, it just goes straight into it, which was great, but you didn't get introduced, so.
Oh yeah, I guess I forgot. We figured out the screen sharing and then I just kind of went ahead, huh?
Yeah, it was awesome. You did great, but I'm like, maybe we should introduce you.
All right, let's get the screen share going. And slideshow from beginning. Well, that thing, it really has a hair trigger, doesn't it?
It does.
Come on.
You breathe on it and it changes to the next one.
Why? All right, I'm gonna have to do this offline because it's just too flaky. Anyway, we'll stop the recording here. Go ahead. So thanks everybody, and hope